Hi everyone, and welcome to this Intro to Cables course. I am Dr. Kirel Benzi. I'm a data artist and senior AI researcher, and I will be your instructor. What is Cables? Cables is a node-based visual programming framework on the web that allows us to create amazing experiences, interactive content, audio reactive visuals, data visualization, you name it. It's very versatile and it can be expanded with a lot of different libraries and tools. As we will see throughout these lessons, we will start from the basics, from zero to hero, and also we will learn how to expand the Cables library, expand the pre-made code blocks that we use to create the visuals with our own. So we will also touch on developing with JavaScript, which is what Cables is based on, and all the web, and so that we can create our own blocks and expand our horizons. I really hope you will enjoy this series, and I will see you right away in the first lesson. So the first thing to get started is to actually go on Cables.gl, the website, and create an account. Register here. Once you have your account, you can log in and enter the main Cables starting page. So the thing you will notice first is that this page is it's a bit busy, but it's very informative because you have some kind of examples, top projects of the month, which are called patches in Cables. You know, cables and patches, it goes back to the origin of synthesizers and all the cables you actually had to put in the machine to make everything work, just so you know. You have the latest patches here, random ops, which are basically code blocks that we use when we pipe together to create the projects. And you can, if you check all of these, you can really learn by example, which is the main philosophy behind Cables. There's a documentation, of course, here if you go in the Learn tab, but it's, to be honest, it's a bit scarce. The approach here is to learn by example. We have some intro video as well. So we will also do this, and I will share examples with you so you can basically remix, try to change some of the parameters in the Cables projects, and see how it reacts and put your own basically data in. Now, a few recommendations to code with Cables, to create projects. I would strongly suggest that you use a mouse, a regular 3-button mouse, left click, right click, and a mouse wheel, because we will manipulate 3D object, and it can be a bit tricky with only a trackpad. If you have a second screen, it's also interesting so you can follow along. And most importantly, try to do all the projects on the computer. We are doing interactive graphics, and graphics are demanding in terms of computational power. So you need the best computer that you have would do the job. Please don't try to follow along just using a simple tablet or your phone. If you want to make the projects, you have to use a computer and a mouse if you can. So now let's get started. The first thing you will notice, so we will cover everything. On the right, you have your profile, you have some your data, invitation, teams, and so forth. What is interesting for us now is to go on create. I'll just show you here. When you have all your projects, it will be on my patches, which are like all the projects that you have created or that contributed to. Notice that there is a strong community feeling in Cables, and you can share patches with different people. So and collaborate. So this is also the thing we try to do here, is to build a community of learners, trying to build relationships together and hopefully collaborate on cool projects. So if you go here and create, this is where you would create your first project. We have some predefined templates, but I suggest we just simply start with an empty project. All right, now we are in our first Cables project. So let me talk quickly about the user interface. What we have here on the left, it's called the patch area. This is where we create and connect our code blocks to create a visualization. Here is the viewer. This is where the result happens. What we code here appears there. And you will see that we also have some parameters. All the blocks that we click have parameters that appears there very quickly, right? On top, you have the patch settings. You can change the name of the project, put some tags. The collaboration aspect that I mentioned is also there. This is where you can invite people, and I'll talk in more details about the teams a bit later in the course. You have the backups of your patch, and you can also delete, which I would not recommend to use there, but there's another way to delete the patch, but it doesn't really matter to delete. We can always there's no limitation to the number of patches we can create, so no problem there. Also, when you have a patch, you can decide to make it public so that everyone can see it, or you can, by default, it's private, only you can see it and your collaborators. You can also create a secret, basically URL here, so that people only with the like a bit like a YouTube private video, like unlisted video, or only people with the link can access the patch. You can also set a license to earn your patch. By default there's no license. If you don't want anyone to copy part of your code, you put all right reserve. If you want this to be a CC common, Creative Commons, you can set it here, and some additional license that you can also put there. So very quickly, this is the tour of the user interface. Something that you may consider is to change the editor preference. Most notably the style of the cables, which are by default curved, and I try to put them more straight. I suggest you use straight. Change the size of the whole UI, and some like other things. Something that will activate is the presentation mode, so that when I click on the page, you would actually see what I type. So when I reload the page now, if I press any key, you would see it here, which is pretty handy for you to follow along. So how do we get started? You notice it's really empty, right? It's gray and there's nothing that appears on the screen. The key thing is to play with cables is to basically put in the project some code blocks to basically compose our visualization. To do this, you can either use the escape or the tab key on your keyboard. I suggest you use the tab key. So if we press tab, you have this panel that opens, and you notice that there's like many different kind of global categories for all the blocks that you can find in cables. And the main thing that we will play with, that you would always need in all your project, is the main loop. The main loop basically creates tells the computer to redraw the frame, the image, every time your screen refreshes. So by default it's 60 times per second, but if you have a higher frame rate screen like mine, you would see that if I click here, it's been refreshed at 120 frames per second. So basically the computer clears the image and redraws everything. So for now it's black, so it doesn't really make any sense, but it's just to explain how it works. Now we have this main loop, and notice that with my mouse I can zoom really close or far, and as I said before, this is an infinite canvas. This is where we're gonna create and patch, to like literally mean connect blocks together to make the magic happen. I mentioned before that when you click on an operator, let me try again, I'm clicking on an operator, I have this panel here, which is the details panel, the parameter pane that appears. This is really interesting to look at. I mean, you absolutely need to look at it, because this is where you set some of the options and for each code block. So in our case here, we have the main loop. It doesn't really tell us much, but notice two things. First, input and output, and notice that you have exactly the same number of basically green inputs here that you have on the left. It's exactly equivalent. Whatever you do here, you can do the same by connecting and basically passing value in the input, and the three outputs that you see here, this yellow and two greens, are also there. This is really important as a concept. Everything that happens here can be modified by other blocks, basically. And the way to do that is to connect them with cables, hence the name cables. So very simple. Something that we have to do very often is to save your patch. So you can of course click, but you can just use the Control-S key and you see on the right patch saved. This is really important, because if something goes wrong, you can always refresh the page. But if you refresh the page and you didn't save, then you would lose your latest modifications, right? So be careful with this, and regularly save your projects. I would maybe rename this and call this, first cables project, and save it. just for us to to be very clear. Okay. So this is basically the very small overview of the user interface. I will gradually introduce a bit more complexity. There's not that much, but there's a bit of options about how you resize everything if you need to. So now maybe let's start to make something appear on the screen. So the first thing I would suggest we do is to just try to change this background to another color. And the block that we need for this is called clear color. And you would ask, why is it called clear color? It doesn't seem like a good name. It could be a change background. But if we talk about the details, Cables is built on top of WebGL, which is basically a browser API, browser way of interacting with your graphics card using a version called WebGL, which is basically a simplified version of OpenGL, which is for Open Graphic Language. And in this OpenGL original name, function, it was called clear color. So the Cables dev used the same here. And in the future, we will have WebGPU. It's just being released right now. And Cables will also evolve so that you can use more, more powerful APIs and have better graphics. It's just getting started at the time when I'm shooting this video, so not all platforms supports it right now. But for you as a user, it would really not be any different, because all the complexity is hidden inside of the blocks. And if you are joining us from a programming background, notice that all the blocks that you see here is not magic. It's actually code, and you can click here and see View Opcode to see that it's actually pure JavaScript code. So if you know how to code, and we'll cover that in the future, you see the power of Cables, because you can create your own blocks and connect them, basically creating micro APIs, micro blocks that can be connected together. So here I put, going back to our clear color, I put this clear color up, which says, okay, sets all the clear pixel to one color and used to change the background color. Pretty cool. Now, if I don't really know how to use it, you can always, on each of the blocks we're going to put, you can always go and view the documentation or view the example. So if I click view documentation, notice that I have all the inputs are labeled, and I have an example patch here to demonstrate how to use the op. So I can just go open example in the editor, and I will open a new patch here where you have a clear color. The other things there that I'm going to cover, but this is really a good example of the example patch. So we have this clear color here. Going back there, notice that okay, I have clear color, and it seems that I can basically use my mouse to change the value of the red, green, blue, and alpha channel. But okay, even I can click here and also modify the color, but nothing happens on screen. And the reason is, to be basically activated, this op needs to be connected to the main loop. It needs to basically be run after. For now, we have our main loop, and whatever we put on the board here is not connected, so it doesn't run. So to make it run, the only most important thing here is it's the render. It's the yellow cable, which is basically, it says at each frame after my main loop, I will clear the screen and then execute this block here, which changes the color. So now if I go here and I can change, interactively, and because it's refreshed so fast, I don't see the difference. So to me and to you, it looks very fluid. But if we could slow down the computer, you would actually see being cleared and then being drawn. But it's so fast that it seems very reactive. Okay, so this was our first op, two first ops, the main loop and the clear color. And I hope it demonstrates a bit of the principle of connecting things and being able to also disconnect things. The only way to, there are two ways you can basically go on the link here and use the right click. This is where it's important to have a mouse. Right click to disconnect a cable, right? You can do it again, up and disconnecting. If you have an op in between, let's say I have two clear colors, which is stupid, but just to show you. Notice that I could actually drag and place an op. So if it's a simple like connection like the yellow one, it would work. It will not guarantee that to work with other things, but you can also click on the thing you want to move and shake it around. And if you shake it around, then it also disconnects it from the main chain, basically. So it's very handy, being able to disconnect link. If you want to move a link around, let's say I'm here, but I want to have this clear color, which is red, and this one is blue. I want to know, and I don't want to delete the cable and redraw it every time. What I can do is also press the right click, keep it pressed, and drag it, and then drop it here. So it's also a way to move the cables around. Okay, so this is a very basic user interface, and yeah, if you have a mouse, it's more practical to move things around. All right, let's continue with our clear color here. One thing that I mentioned is that every parameter that you move, play with on the right part is equivalent to basically driving them with a block or a cable in the patch view. So if I now put a number, which is really just putting a constant value and connecting this number to my clear color, it's equivalent, that of me playing it with my mouse. But notice that here on the right side, I cannot move the number anymore. It is driven by this number. So this number here could be anything if you think about it. It could be driven by the accelerometer of your phone. It could be driven by the outside temperature, by some data that you pull from the web, anything that you can imagine. And that's basically the power of cables, could be there as an input. So because this is a color value, as I said before, cables rescales all the value, it clamps it between 0 and 1. So 1 would be the maximum red value, or green or blue or alpha. But of course, the rest of the patch, you can use any numbers you want. I can put 1,000 here. Yeah, I can even technically put 1,000 here, but it will basically be clamped and stopped at 1, so it doesn't blow up. Any number you think about could be now used to drive the background. Pretty cool. Now another thing that is a bit specific to cables, I can use the same number and drive 2 parameters at once. Right? I can put this, and I don't need to create one op per cable. I can, for instance, here have one number that drives the red and green value, and this number there could drive here the blue value. So, and if I move this one, it will move both values at once. Pretty cool. Now, if you need to move things around and organize your patch, maybe you don't really know what this number is actually driving. The thing that you can do, though, is to put some comments that you can actually technically rename the op here and call it whatever you want. I would suggest you don't do this and instead use the comment box here, so that anyone that opens your patch, or even yourself later on, see right away what is the type or what is this op doing. And you can put any kind of comment here to tell you, okay, this drives the green value, and everything here is actually changing the background color. So if you want to annotate multiple ops at once, you can group them in something called in an op called an area, which is a bit of a weird op. It's basically an empty op that you can put, and you see anything that is put inside now is basically dragged by this area. If you want to move it around, you can press the Alt key and move the whole area, and then everything is connected. You can also name the area. So here, let's call it background, and you see it's a bit on top of everything. So I'm gonna press Alt again to move it outside of the op. And now when I move the background, everything moves together. Okay, so now I'm saving the patch, and let's continue a bit. For now, we're just basically changing the background. It's not really exciting, but let's try to maybe put a simple 3D shape and see how it looks like. In Cables, you have many predefined geometries. The simplest one I can show you is the cube, because it gives a sense of, there's a 3D shape. And by default, if I just put the cube in the patch view, nothing happens. It actually tells you this one, these ports should be connected. So, okay, I need to connect the render view and the render input. And if I think about the whole patch again, I'm drawing the main loop, clearing the screen, coloring the screen with the color, this yellowish color, and then now drawing a cube. So the cube now with the same input parameters, I can play with the width, length, and height. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know what you think, but it doesn't really look like a cube. It looks more like a rectangle to me. And if you think about it, what is missing is our sense of depth. Think of this as the camera of a phone, and the cube is perfectly aligned with the camera, so you only see one face. To be able to see more faces and to really feel like the object is in 3D, it would be nice to be able to move the camera around. So it introduces the first like essential block of a 3D scene is the camera. So we have many cameras and cables. The most common one, I would say 90% of the project, is the orbit control, which basically is a camera centered around the center point of your scene. So think of this as a 3D scene, like a room with an object sitting at the center at 0, 0, 0, 0 for X, 0 for Y, and 0 for Z, the coordinates. Now I'm gonna drag my orbit controls. It doesn't really change much. But what I can do now is that if I press the left button, I can move my camera around. I'm not moving the cube. The cube always stays in the center of the room, but it's like I have a phone and I'm walking around the cube, basically. Now, something is a bit weird with this cube. It's, okay, look, we feel like it's 3D, but we don't really have a sense of colors or perception of how close or how far something is. And it's really one unique color, so it's a bit weird. The way to change that is to set a material, which basically says, okay, what is this cube made of? Is it wood? Is it glass? Is it metal? Is it just a single color? Basically, if you think of all the objects around you, they are always made of something, and depending on how the light reflects and bounces off the object, you also perceive the shininess, or metalness, or roughness of the material, of the shape. So it's a bit of the same principle that we have in our 3D world, and the way we can do that. So we have, as I said, many materials. If we just type material, you would see a list of them, and yeah, just like some of them, I would say like 5, 6. The simpler one, shaded, is called the Lambert material. So, and once again, I need to connect this, and notice that I need to connect this before we draw the shape, because in the graphics pipeline, it's technically the camera and the material has nothing to do, and they are not the same order, but it's good practice to put a camera, then basically say, okay, now the next thing I'm gonna draw, I'm gonna color it in blue, and then draw the final geometry. So by just putting the material in between the camera and the geometry, notice that now I can start to perceive the depth of the cube, because when it's closer to my camera, it's lighter, and when it's farther away, it's darker. So now I can start to see the cube and not just a simple rectangle, even though I'm moving it around. So it looks simple, but it's already pretty interesting. We've covered like essential principles of just a 3D scene in general, with a camera, a material, and a shape. And if you think about all the patches, there's always somehow a camera that you can move around, and some shapes that you play with, right? So the simplest shape is a cube, but it could be a sphere, rectangle, and triangle, and so forth. And this is how you compose this shape that makes the final visualization of your project. So just to before we end this session, let me just show you maybe a more I would say more impressive projects. This is very simple, but I hope it gets everything rolling for you. Now let me show you this, which is a better, I would say, a project that I did, which is a visualization of all the emails of a company, of one day of emails of a bank. So they gave me access to their 270,000 emails, and I had to filter them to basically create this large-scale interactive visualization. Or you can see what you see here is really data-driven. All the links that you see are basically an email being exchanged by people outside the company, on the outside sphere, to people inside the company. And we have some parameters pane here. You can improve this, make it faster, slower, change the opacity, put more, better see the threats, because this was about cybersecurity. So there's a threat and non-threat, threatening emails basically. So this is a more complex project, just to show you that it's made with Cables, but we can make some more amazing stuff. I also have this one for you. It's a job that I did for Google, which is about the cube and some brands that they using machine learning to extract how the presence of the brand on the web and colors basically all the points that you see here. I'll give the link in the description. This is also made with Cables, and this was an installation that was also not only on the web but also physically showed at the Fashion Week. So it's still Cables. We start small with our simple cube here and changing the background, but we'll gradually build all the skills we need to create very complex projects, and most importantly for you to learn what is the area you want to dive in, and for you to be a bit autonomous in your learning of Cables, because it's really it's a never-ending journey. But I think once you get all the principles of how the tool works, you can start to expand it and go in any direction you want. So that's a wrap for this lesson, and see you in the next one.